Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much for your patience. I really appreciate it. Melissa is here. We're giving her a moment just to breathe for a second, and she and Cherie will be out in just a moment. So I'm Andrew Fenneman, the executive director here at the Lincoln Theater, and it's my pleasure. Thank you. Thanks. To welcome you to our latest and our newest free series, which is Talking Food in Maine, Intimate Conversations. And we've built this off of a series that we started 7 years ago with the lovely Jane Damon, which was Talking Art, which will also continue this year in November. But I thought, everyone loves food. So we have to talk about food. And I've been thinking about doing this for 5 years, if you can imagine. It's been on my list of, these are some things we could do. That would be fun. So I am just thrilled to actually see it come to fruition tonight. And this is just one of our free events. We do 60 of them plus a year here at the theater because we like being part of this community, and we are a community organization, and when we can do stuff like this, I am just so thrilled. But we couldn't do it without our sponsors. You knew that was coming, right? Right. So I would like to thank our sponsors for this evening, King Iders Pub, the Maine Coast Inn here in Damariscotta, and lastly, Maine Home and Design and their magazine Eat Maine, who have all actually sponsored this for us tonight. They're actually, thank you for them. They're actually sponsoring this series, and they did this fabulous logo for us. I love this. It's really cool. And we spent hours going, do we need to put the plates in so people know it says food? Do we have the plates or not? And we went with the plates. We thought the plates would be a really good idea. So I'm grateful for them. And beyond that, I'm also grateful to you for being here, and then to Cherie Scott. Cherie is going to be our host for this series. And one of the reasons it took me 5 years to make this come to fruition was I had to find the right person. And she is fantastic. I just love her. I was so like, yes, before she comes out. I wanted someone that was knowledgeable about food and the culinary world here in Maine, had a passion about food, but also was just a really great person. So I thought I would love to watch this woman spend time with people that she's interested in, and I think she would really be entertaining to us. And so I'm thrilled when I talked to Cherie about a year ago. I said, would you be interested? And the next day I got an email going, here are 20 people I'd like to have. So we've got a great series lined up. I'm also happy to say Kerry Altiero is here in the house. He's going to be our guest actually next month from up at the Cafe Miranda in Rockland. So Kerry, thank you for being here. So you obviously need to come to see Kerry as well. And with that, I do want to turn it over to Cherie because you've been waiting so long. So please join me in having a warm welcome to Cherie Scott, and welcome to our first Talking Food in Maine. Cherie?
F1. Whew, that was close. So, thank you for all being here. Thank you for being so patient. Thank you for not leaving, going back for dessert. And also, if there was anyone that was worth the wait. Yes. I mean, I felt like I won the golden ticket when she said she was going to do this. So, you know what? Without further ado, please join me in giving Melissa Kelly, the one, the only, the warmest welcome ever, because God knows she needs it. Hello. Come here. All right, so before we get started, she needs some nitro coffee brew from Capacity, and she needs a sip of Prosecco. So which one's it gonna be?
I'm going for the Prosecco.
There we go. Cheers.
Thank you all for being here, and my apologies for my delay. President Trump is responsible for that. JFK, New York was a nightmare these last couple days, which I had to be there. It was the UN climate change, which is amazing, but I was staying on 39th and 1st, right by the UN. And yeah.
So tell us what you were doing in New York City.
I was working with Luke's Lobster.
Okay.
Luke's Lobster is having their 10-year anniversary. Oh, cool. And they have invited in each of their locations, a different chef to create a lobster roll, donating proceeds to a charity of the chef's choice, which I choose Full Plates Potential, No Kid Hungry.
That's awesome. Okay, so you've got to tell us, what was Primo signature lobster roll
Well, of
like?
course it had pork on it, right?
Of course.
So we call it the PLT. It's a pancetta, lobster and tomato.
Lovely, and had a nice basil, I'm assuming,
A
from that
basil
garden.
aioli, yeah, it's pretty yummy. And they call it the Maine roll because a lot of there was a Chicago dog from Paul Kahn and different rolls from chefs all over the country. So we were the Maine roll.
Awesome. So can we taste this roll
You
somewhere
can
in Maine?
at their Luke's Lobster in Portland.
Oh, at the new restaurant?
Yeah, it's available for the whole month of October.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, just for October?
Just for October, and the proceeds go to Full Plates Potential, so you should go have one.
That's awesome. Thank you for doing
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
So tell us about your big milestone. What's going on for you this year?
Oh, wow. 20 years. Primo's
Wow.
20th anniversary.
20 years. That's amazing. You know, you look like you're 22,
Well, you're
so,
very
she
kind,
looks
but-
amazing. Right.
20 years in the restaurant business is like, I don't even want to say dog years because it's way harder than that. So I am like 180 years old right now.
I want to look like you when I'm 180. As long as you tell me I'm
Good
going to look like
genes.
you. Yeah, great genes. And I love that smile. It's a great smile.
But 20 years is, building something from the ground up. Carrie's in here, he knows, because he's even way ahead of me. Not that far, but yeah, the blood, sweat, and tears you put into running a business, any business, but the restaurant business comes at you from every angle.
So tell us about this very neat promotion that I heard about that's super yummy. Because only you could have come up with that. Tell us about it.
Well, we're so fortunate in Rockland to have Bixby Chocolate, which is a woman-owned business. She makes bean-to-bar chocolate, which I think is fabulous. But I decided we have our bar snack. It's rosemary roasted almonds that I've done forever, for 20 years, maybe even longer before that. And so I decided to collaborate with Kate on that, and we took our bar almonds and smashed them up into a 70% cocoa Dominican chocolate bar with sea salt and make a 20-year, we called it the 20-carat bar. And the reason why I called it the 20-carat bar is because I was always in love with Willy Wonka when I was growing up. And so we actually, every run of bars we make, we put a golden ticket. And so there are actually, right now, there are 4 golden tickets out there, and a few more to come.
Wait, so how many total? How many total golden tickets?
I think we're going to probably end up with 6. And I said 5 because that was Willy Wonka's, but we're like pushing it a little further.
Because that's how Melissa does it. She pushes
Yeah, a
it
little
just one
further.
step further. Okay, so tell me, where can we buy these bars? Like, are you selling them just at Primo, or can we buy them online?
We
or-
sell them at Primo. They sell them at the Good Turn Co-op. They sell that at Main Street Meats, Brown Trading in Portland, Josephine in Camden. Yeah, and at Bixby also. So yeah, I think Bixby's selling them online as well.
That's awesome. And you're going to tell us tonight exactly what those prices are, right?
I can tell you some of them.
Yes, tell
A few
us.
are secrets. Well, there's several tickets that are dinner for 2. There's a cooking class for 8. Yeah, there is, let me think about, there's salami and eggs from Primo for like every month for a year. That's a good prize.
And
isn't
those are
it?
Primo
Yeah.
eggs. I mean-
Homemade charcuterie and eggs from Primo delivered to your house once a month.
Nice. So you better go and get that last ticket. Somebody better go get that last ticket.
Yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
the grand prize is going to be like, it's the restaurant. It's all yours.
Take it. I love it. All right. So walk us back in time. Where did you grow up?
Oh, so I grew up on Long Island in New York. It's funny because I don't really get out there very often anymore. However, my sister and I have a few relatives, my aunts and uncles who live out there, but it's changed so much since I lived there. When I grew up, there were still farms down the street and it wasn't so populated. And now I go back and it's tension, is traffic and so many people, and it's very different. But it was a great place to grow up when I was there.
So when you lived in Long Island, like what were your favorite food memories? I mean, when did it all start for you? When did that love affair with food develop?
I was super fortunate to grow up across the street from my grandparents. So like literally their house was, I could wake up in my pajamas and run over there and have breakfast and then run back home and get dressed for school. And I took advantage of that majorly because they ate dinner earlier than us, so I would go see what they were having for dinner before I decided what my mom was making for dinner. Sometimes they'd eat 2 dinners.
So what was your favorite dinner that your grandparents made you?
My grandmother was Irish, and her husband Primo Magnani, Italian, and she learned to cook from his mom. She had to learn to cook when they got married. She made all kinds of delicious Italian-American things, spaghetti and meatballs, lasagna, eggplant parmesan, all of those things. But some of my biggest memories were like she would make pork chops, but then the next day she would take the leftover pork chops and put them in the tomato sauce and cook it, and it would have, she would throw rosemary in there, and then she would put it on pasta, and the pork would be picked off the bone, and handmade pasta. She learned how to make pasta, and we would make fresh noodles and cappelletti and soups, and she was a great cook. That was her job.
And what did your grandfather do? What was he doing?
Primo was a butcher. He worked for the USDA. He worked as a government meat inspector, and he was a butcher from the Bronx, New York.
Nice. So your love affair with food started at grandparents, but what did you cook at home? Like when you got back to your house for that second meal, what was on Melissa's table for dinner every night?
So my mom was a very good cook also. Eggplant parmesan is my favorite thing she makes. She puts it in my refrigerator pretty much twice a month.
So did she ever let you in the kitchen with her, or did you think you spent more time with your grandma in the kitchen? Like which of the two did you have more freedom kind of in the kitchen to play around?
I think I cooked more with my grandmother than with my mom. And when I was growing up, my mom had to end up taking a job, so sometimes we had to be responsible for dinner. So we rotated it through my brother and my sister and myself. And so I remember I didn't know what I was doing. I was a little kid and trying to make dinner for the family, so I would roast chicken, and we didn't have internet or Google or anything like that. So
just experimenting.
Experimenting, right. Yeah.
Right. So you graduated high school in Long Island? Mm-hmm. So did you go right off to culinary school?
No, I actually came to Maine, to go to University of Maine first.
Why Maine?
So my dad at that point was getting transferred to Bangor. There was a new United Airlines. He worked for United Airlines, and there was a new station opening there. And so my family was moving here, and I was like not sure what I was going to do, what I wanted to do, and I was like, all right, well, I'll move up there with them. And I went to University of Maine for a little bit, and I was very homesick coming to Bangor, Maine from Long Island. I missed all my friends, and I thought it was so weird up there. It was really weird up there. Oh my God! Like there was.
So tell us what was the weirdest thing you saw in Bangor?
Okay, so I had a boyfriend from New York, and he came up to visit, and I'm like, all right, let's go out for dinner. And so we went to this restaurant. It was called the Orinoco Inn. Does anyone remember that? Okay, so we walked in. It was so crazy. There was a bar, and there was like a few people sitting at the bar and a bartender, and then the dining room was on this side, but it was pretty much empty. And we said we'd like to have dinner, 2 people, and he really wanted to have lobster because he's coming to Maine, he's from New York. And we said, do you have lobster? She said, sure. And so she said, well, how about this table? And she sat us at a table for 12 in the middle, the 2 of us, side by side, facing the bar, which had a giant television screen which was playing Death of a Salesman.
Okay, that's weird.
It was weird. And like
Cool,
she
but
had to
weird.
like dust off the menus. And I was like, does anyone ever eat here? And then the first server came by, and she was probably in her late 60s. And she said, oh, would you care for something to drink? And we said, sure, we'll have a iced tea or whatever. And then she went back into the kitchen. She came out and she brought us like this little glass. It looked kind of like this, and it had powdered sugar in it and peaches, sliced peaches.
And what did she pour in it?
No, she just gave us that. There was no drink involved. That was like our amuse-bouche. And
All right, that's
I was
funny.
like, okay. Then she came by again with like a little bowl of pretzels. And so we
Did they have
started to
salt
watch
on
the
them?
movie
Okay.
because there was nothing else to really do. But he ordered a lobster and I ordered steak. And his lobster, he wanted a whole lobster, and his lobster came on a plate with like a glass dome, like a cheese dome on it. And it was a few pieces of lobster meat. And I got this Flintstone size like prime rib, like this big, and the chef came out with a giant knife and was slicing it at the table. We were the only ones in the whole restaurant. And I was like, what is going on?
Oh my gosh.
It was bizarre.
So it was that moment that you decided,
To run away from
I'm
Maine
going to
and
run
go
away
to
from Maine.
culinary school.
right? Because you could do better. All right, so you head off to culinary school because you couldn't take Bangor for one more
Right.
minute, right? And you head off to CIA.
I did, yeah.
So what was it like there for you? I mean, were you primarily like the only female student in the whole class? Were a
No.
whole
So
bunch
when
of
I
males?
went to CIA, there were a few women. I mean, each class was, I think, 78 students, and it was broken up into 4 different groups. There was 2 a.m., 2 p.m. groups. And when I first started, I think we had 3 women in my class, and the group was like 78. By the time we graduated, quite a few people dropped out. Most of the women dropped out. And in my particular group, we went from 18 to 9, and I was the only female in the group at that point.
Wow.
So it was, and it was a different day than today. A lot of European chefs were instructors there, and the Me Too did definitely not exist. Yeah. So you had to look over your shoulder and watch your.
Did you tell them they were Primo Magnani's grandchild? He's a butcher, and I'll come after you. Is that what you did? Is that the vibe? Is that what you said out there?
Actually, my first job ever, when I was 15 years old, on Long Island, was in the Sunrise Mall in Massapequa, at a Sbarro pizzeria, and it was Tony Sbarro was like there. It was like the original.
Wow.
And Carrie, don't laugh. Did I ever tell you this story? Anyway, the pizza guy was this guy named Jimmy, who was this very Guido Italian guy. And I was 15. I didn't know anything, basically. And I came to work, and my first day, and I went into the restroom to get changed for work, and Jimmy busted the door open and like pushed me up against the door. And he was 23, I think, and I was like, Jimmy, is the pepperoni in your pants? Like literally that happened, and I took my knee and kicked him so hard, and he didn't talk to me again for 6 months.
Wow.
That's back in the day. I mean, I didn't even know what the hell was going on. I was like, what is that? What are you doing? Go back to the pizza station, Jimmy. Get that pepperoni out of your pants. That's disgusting. But I learned like a quick, hard lesson right there as, my heart was racing, and I said, I am definitely not putting up with anything as a woman in a kitchen. And that was at 15.
Way to go.
Yeah.
So no more pepperoni pants
No.
at CIA.
that
Didn't happen.
No.
So you graduate from CIA. You're top of the class. Out of what, 9?
Well,
So-
our whole class ended up probably like 56 students, but 9 in my particular group.
So when you graduate top of the class at CIA, I mean, you're top commodity, right? So did you get scooped up into different stages, which are like internships at different hotels or hotel groups? Or, like, what was your trajectory? Like, what were you psyched up to do at that point?
When I first graduated, I really wanted to learn under like a serious chef. So I chose to go to the Greenbrier in West Virginia, which there was a chef who was a certified master chef. There were, at that point, there might have been like 12 master chefs in the United States. He was German. His name was Hartmut Henke, who I still have a really great relationship with. Drove down to the Greenbrier. White Sulphur Springs makes Rockland look like a metropolis. It was pretty scary to live there, but I had an amazing experience, and they had an apprenticeship program, which I wasn't going to do the apprenticeship program because I had already gone to culinary school, but I worked there as a cook, and he was very disciplined chef. Taught me if your knife wasn't sharp, it went in the garbage. Everything had to be perfect, and he was very scary and very an amazing chef. So he taught me so much.
So your next step was, when you're out of there, you're like, all right, I'm going next to Larry Forgione.
So while I was at the Greenbrier, Larry came to do a dinner, and a friend of mine had worked there, and I had heard all these stories about Larry and his food and this great restaurant. And so Larry came down to do a dinner, and I said, when I finish here, I would love to come work for you. And he said, oh, well, just, call me when you get back to New York. And I did, and he didn't have anything right away, and then after a little bit, he hired me. The original American Place was up on Lexington and 71st. It was a small little 45-seat restaurant, and I got hired to be a cook there, and started working there with a tiny little kitchen. There was maybe 5 of us total.
And you were like a grill cook, like starting out?
I worked
and
on the
Larry
grill.
Forgione is like godfather of American cuisine, so you're learning from the
at
absolute
that
best.
point, I mean, he was in his prime, and like the restaurant was getting lots of accolades. It was a 3-star New York Times restaurant, and so there was a lot of pressure to perform. It was pretty scary, and I worked on the line. There was one other girl in the kitchen. She was a pastry chef, and then it was myself and Steve and Sal, from New York. And but they respected me because I worked hard and taught me. And then we moved the restaurant while I was there to 2 Park Avenue, and it was much bigger. We went from 35 seats to 150 seats. So it was a great experience for me to learn, to see opening a new restaurant and being involved in that whole transition. And at that point, Larry said, well, where do you want to work? And I said, I would like to learn charcuterie. I'm really interested in that. And I said, if you put me in charge of like the cold side and get a smoker, I will teach myself. And he did. Like, he trusted me, and he did. And I pushed and pushed, and I would bring dishes to him, and he would critique and say no or yes. And
were you ever scared of him? I mean, he was a force.
He is a force. He's a very kind of quiet guy. It's so funny. I actually spoke to him today, and I haven't talked to him in a while. He's very pensive, but also like a big teddy bear. So I wasn't really afraid of him. Like, you could bring something to him and he would critique it, and you'd be like, oh, I worked for 3 days on this dish. And he would say, it's like, doesn't taste good, or you should do this differently or that differently. And he would change it, and I would learn. So it was a good relationship.
But he obviously invested in you, because he then asked you to be his executive chef for the American Place. Where was the next one? Was it Miami?
Well, first I went with him. He opened a country restaurant up in Rhinebeck at the Beekman Arms, and I was the opening chef. And that was my first chef's position, which was really scary. But having Larry behind me was like, I felt a little bit of security. We took over an existing restaurant. The Beekman Arms has been open since 1766. It's the longest continuously operating inn in the United States. It's never closed for one day. And so we could never close. And so we just moved in with the staff who were smoking cigarettes and drinking beer in the kitchen. I was like, what is going on here? because it's not how Larry's kitchen ran. And he like infiltrated me as this consultant in a way, and then eventually we started to kind of pick the staff off and choose who was going to work out and who wasn't, and remolded it, started to do our own menus. And the food there was pretty awful when we took over. Everything was in a giant steam table. There'd be like chicken pot pie that went in the steam table at 7 o'clock in the morning. It was still there at 10 o'clock at night, all crusty. And so I was horrified.
But you had a chance to play around with charcuterie, which is kind of what your passion was.
I did.
So
I mean,
you do that.
I mean, that whole experience was amazing for me because, I mean, I had to run this restaurant, which was big. You know, we were doing volume and 7 days a week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and yeah, it was.
And your first leadership role too, not just as, you know, as a sous chef, but you were managing the whole team, the whole operation.
Yeah, and Larry was kind of on and off. He wasn't always there, so I definitely had a few disastrous days.
You want to share one of those, or should we keep moving on?
Well, I can tell you two funny stories. One, when we first took over, it was a rainy day, kind of like tonight was, and I had ordered, we still dealt with some purveyors from New York, and I had a giant meat delivery coming in. And I was still kind of turning over the staff, who was going to stay, I was feeling them all out. And the delivery guy came in the back of the kitchen. I had hired a couple young kids from Oaxaca who just like showed up at my doorstep, and they were like such great workers. And so I was teaching them how to butcher, and this delivery guy came in the kitchen and he said, I have a meat delivery. He's like, where's the chef? And one of the old guys who had worked there, who wasn't really sure about me yet, he's like, that's her. And he's like, her? He's like, yep. He's like, her? He's like, you're the chef? I was like, yes. He's like, do you like being a chef, little girl? I said, do you like being a truck driver, sir? You can wait outside in the rain while I check this delivery in. And I said, my heart was like going like this.
Yes. And
I went out in the dining room. Larry's sitting there like at the table having a meeting. And I said, Larry, come in the kitchen. I just threw this guy out of the kitchen. So the next week, that delivery guy came with a bouquet of flowers.
Oh.
And I said, yes, I am the chef.
You told him.
So, you know, being a young woman, I think at that point I was in my early 20s, and running a kitchen for a force like Larry Forgione, I had a big reputation to live up to and a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. And I took it very seriously, and I wasn't messing around with the delivery guy or anybody at that point. I was just like, there's no cigarettes in the kitchen. Get that beer out of here and you can wait outside.
You know, it's funny you tell me this story because I actually talked to one of your former chefs, and he told me, when a new person starts at Primo and they come up to you and say, so when can I go get my cigarette break? You don't, dude. You don't. You just don't smoke. You just don't do it. You work from the minute you clock in to the minute you clock out. And then you can go do whatever you want or sneak one in, but we'll smell it on you. So there's no smoking when you're working, you know, and that's awesome. So you sort of maintained that unspoken rule that,
yeah,
you know,
I mean,
it's your
I
kitchen.
feel like I've been lucky to have people around me who are serious about what they do. And I say, you know, as a chef, if you're going to smoke, it's going to ruin your palate. And if you want to do that on your own time, that's fine, but you're not doing it on my time. That's the way it goes.
I never even thought of it that way.
Yeah,
I never thought of it as
yeah.
like it ruins your palate. I didn't think of that as a chef, how important that is to have your palate. I mean, what more could you ask for in a chef to have a very seasoned palate?
Definitely.
So what took you from Rhinebeck, New York, all the way to the West Coast? I mean, you ended up with, you know, Chez Panisse. How did you discover Chez Panisse?
Well, I went with Larry. So from the Beekman Arms, Larry was going to open a restaurant at the Jockey Club in Miami. And at that point, South Beach was just kind of starting to sizzle a little bit. And so I was excited about it, new opportunity, and I had been at the Beekman Arms for a few years and felt like it was a good time to make a move, and Miami seemed exciting, and so I went with him there found out that the Jockey Club was not in South Beach. It was a private club for many, many years, for decades, and the people who lived there actually didn't really want it to be open to the public, but the owner was trying to bring Larry in and have this great restaurant. So they invested a lot of money, and I went down there to open it, and we had this giant opening party, like Versace models were like on the pool with no tops on. I was like, what is going on? They were like, they decorated the whole place with like a jungle. There were parrots and tigers and very Miami. Very Miami.
Right.
And
welcome to Miami.
yeah, and so we opened this restaurant and we were making pretty good food, but we were dealing with having these condominiums that were on the property and people who lived there, and they were like, what is this tuna? Like, I want canned tuna. I don't want fresh tuna, you know? And like, we were going through all this crazy stuff. And then Larry started like not showing up. And then I was there by myself. And eventually the restaurant kind of tanked. And I had to make a decision. And while I was there, I had met this chef. He came, his name was Reed Herron. He owned Lulu in San Francisco. And he had come to the restaurant. He was visiting his mom in Miami a few times, and he thought the restaurant was great and the food was great. And he said,
even though it was canned tuna? I mean,
he liked the fresh tuna. Actually.
He liked fresh tuna?
Yeah. He's like, I have an opportunity. And I said, well, I don't know if I'm ready to take a chef's position. This was like kind of, that hurt, that last blow. So he's like, well, just come. I have a lot of projects. And so he got nominated for one of the Food and Wine Best Chefs, and he was invited to the Aspen Food and Wine Classic. So he said, why don't you meet me in Aspen? We'll cook there together, and then you move to San Francisco, and I have all these books and things that I'm working on, and I'll find something for you. So I met him in Aspen, and I was like, worked with him for a couple days, and he was pretty intense. Then I got to Lulu, and he had a very large staff of lovely Mexican fellows who, the minute I walked in the door, they all looked at their watch. And I was the 6th chef in 18 months.
wow.
And they were like, how long do you think she's gonna last? And they were like, you know, so they were the core, they kept the place going, but it was an open kitchen. We all had to wear headsets, and he was gone, but he would walk in and someone would say, Elvis is in the building. And as soon as he came in, he would start like throwing a temper tantrum and throw people's food away. And meanwhile, we're doing 400 covers, and he's throwing your mise en place in the garbage, and cooks were quitting, and I was like trying to keep it together. And he put me in as the chef, and I said I didn't want to take that position, but I did. So then I find myself in San Francisco, so I call Larry, and I said, Larry, what should I, Reed's crazy, he's crazy, I can't work for him, what should I do? And he said, you should go to Chez Panisse. And I said, can you get me in there? He goes, no.
Larry Forgione could
He's
not
like,
get
I'll
you
make
into
a call, try and make a call for you, but it's up to you. So I went and I interviewed, and they said, okay, well, you can work for a few weeks. If you would like to, you can stage for a few weeks for free, which I did for 3 weeks for free. And living out there is not inexpensive.
Right.
And after the 3 weeks, they said, okay, you be hired, and there's the upstairs and the downstairs. So to be a downstairs chef in Chez Panisse is like a big deal. Like, they hire people to work upstairs, and then they learn, and then eventually maybe they move downstairs. But at that point, I had been an executive chef for Larry Forgione, so I'm like, I would like to work downstairs. And they're like, well, that's unheard of. We don't hire someone for downstairs. I said, well, that's what I want to do. So
Did you really say that?
Yeah. So
what did Alice Waters say?
What can we do? She said, well, you have to cook a lunch for me and all of our chefs, and then we'll see if you're capable of working downstairs. And I said, okay.
So tell everybody who Alice Waters is, so just so they know, because I'm not sure if everybody knows who she is.
So Alice Waters is the owner of Chez Panisse, and she's a chef. Chez Panisse now 45 years old, I believe.
Yeah, 1971, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a historic restaurant where she kind of changed food in California, and she spent some time in France, and she brought that style of cooking to her restaurant, and
What style is that?
Creates the menu every day. It's very local, works with like local to the moment kind of farmers and whatever's in season. Very simple, very clean. She's very persnickety and picky. Yeah. So I had to cook for them, and
So what did you do? You left, and you said, "Oh my God, what am I going to cook?"
Yeah, and I
for
had a
Alice
tiny
Waters?"
little apartment,
Right.
so the deal was that you had to go shopping. You had to procure your own ingredients. You couldn't take things from the restaurant. So I had to go shopping. I also had to write the menu, select wines, cook the lunch, and serve the lunch to them.
Cook and serve it?
Cook and serve.
And how many people are we talking about?
And
The
so
whole
I thought it
thing.
was going to be like 5 or 6 people. It ended up being like 13 people.
And how many courses?
And I think I did 4 courses. And
of course, you're presenting each course.
presenting
then you
and
gotta-
speaking it.
Right.
And then at the end, so for 3 days before the meal, I think I changed the menu about 500 times. I was in every market from
Oh my gosh.
Monterey, Berkeley, San Francisco, everywhere, looking for the right ingredients. And then the morning comes where I'm cooking, and you know, we cook in a fireplace there. You have to build a fire, and you pull your grill over the fire. It's not like you turn a switch on or anything. So it's a lot of work. And I cook the lunch, and then I serve the lunch, and then afterwards you sit at the head of the table, and each person around the table critiques you and asks you why did you select that rabbit, and how did you make the stock, where did you get the greens from, every single detail. And Alice, of course, was last. And I mean, it was probably one of the hardest culinary moments of my career. I
have flop sweat just thinking
I did
about
not
it.
sleep for 3 days.
Right,
for
because
3 days.
you cooked like probably one of your finest dinners the most early in your career.
Yeah, and I was
For
like, what is she going to say? And waiting for
lunches.
her critique at the end.
Right.
And then they're like, okay, well, now you can work here. Yeah.
Wow.
And you can work downstairs.
Okay. What did you cook?
Okay.
Thank you.
I did.
Tell us.
I made, so I found some local rabbit, and I made a little, I think I made a little salad first with the rabbit loin, and then I took the rest of the rabbit and made a stock, and I made cappelletti, which is a family recipe for me, my grandmother. We make it at Christmas, so it means little hat in Italian, and it's a little pasta hat that's stuffed with little ricotta cheese. And then I did the pulled rabbit in the broth. That was the kicker for Alice. She loved that one. I did like a wood grilled swordfish with some vegetables, and I'm not like a huge dessert person, and I had to make dessert also. So I ended up making like a little pear tart, and I served it with blue cheese. And she liked that too. So, I mean, I was so I literally went through 10 different menus.
Iterations of the menu.
Yeah.
But you fired them off.
I did. It was
So how long
stressful.
did you work there?
I think I was there for just under a year. And then, I mean, at that point in my career, we were in San Francisco, and actually got a phone call while I was in San Francisco from a cheesemaker who I knew in New York, and he said, I have this exciting project that's happening, and I think you would be the perfect person to run the kitchen.
How did he find you?
Uh,
I mean, there's no like internet and Google. And
No,
all that.
we were. I used to buy cheese from him when I was at the Beekman Arms and An American Place. He sold at the Union Square Market, and he made a sheep milk camembert that I loved. And at the Beekman Arms, I made it one of my signature dishes. And he somehow kept my phone number, or I don't even know how he found me, but he found me. And he said, you should come check this out. And so I actually flew to New York and checked out. It was Old Chatham Sheepherding Company, and they had owned the farm, and they had the cheese business going, and they wanted to open an inn and a restaurant.
So this is Tom and Nancy.
Tom and Nancy, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about them?
So Tom and Nancy Clark, both Cornell graduates, they started Old Chatham Sheepherding Company making sheep milk cheeses, they bought this piece of land in Columbia County, upstate in Old Chatham, which in New York, 500 acres. They had 1,100 sheep, largest sheep dairy farm in the United States, or probably anywhere, because if you go anywhere in the world, they're small farms. No one has that much production.
Yeah, that is big.
And they made a state-of-the-art creamery, and they had this farmhouse that was on the property, and they said, we want to have an inn and a restaurant. And so the Ken, who was the shepherd, he introduced me to Tom and Nancy. I went to their house and cooked for them. Lamb, of course. Lots of
Do we want to know what she cooked and how she did it, or do we want to find out what happened? Okay.
I actually brought my mother with me to that to that interview. We drove up from Long Island to Old Chatham, and we cooked. I cooked, and they ate, and we negotiated some situations that might happen. And then I moved across country from out west to upstate New York. And so we opened Old Chatham Sheepherding Company, and it was a small 6-room inn when we first opened, 35-seat restaurant. And within a year and a half, we became a Relais and Chateau property.
Wow.
It exploded. It was the right place, the right time. I was able to have my hands on everything. And as it was a chef's dream, I said, I would love to have a greenhouse. And Nancy said, okay. Say, can we put a can we make that? What is that stone building over there? Can we make that a smokehouse? Okay. Everything I wanted to do, and I had a lot of ideas, as I always do, they agreed upon, and there was a buzz. It was an area where a lot of New Yorkers had weekend homes, so the right people were our customers, and
your dream. I mean, you're a young chef, and they're eating right out of your hands.
It was amazing. It was an amazing experience, and Tom and Nancy were so supportive, and they just wanted it. And when we grew, so we went from 6 rooms, and we had 12 rooms, and then eventually they had 20 rooms. They ended up buying some buildings down the street and making guest houses and cottages,
but it was all about that food. It was about the food right there.
And the restaurant was packed every night. We got like crazy reviews, and so that was like a huge leap for me.
Now don't be humble, because that's what got you your first James Beard Award, right?
Yes. It did.
And you get this James Beard Award, Best Chef Northeast. You're not nominated right off the bat, but you just win it, right? It's one thing to be nominated and you win it. Tom and Nancy are on,
Yeah, it was
cloud.
pretty crazy. It's like kind of like your Cinderella for the night.
Right.
You go to this thing, like you're nominated, you don't know what's going to happen. You buy a fancy outfit, you invite a few people, and then all of a sudden it's like a whirlwind. But then the next day I was like scrubbing pots again.
The life of a chef. Right.
But yeah, it was pretty amazing. And it was all because we created this little magical place. And it was very magical. And Tom and Nancy are amazing. But at that point, I kind of was ready to do my own thing. And I had been looking in Maine. And
not in Bangor, for sure.
Not in Bangor.
Right. So now you win this James Beard Award. Seriously, guys, you could have cooked in any state in the country. You could have cooked anywhere in the world. What brought you back to Maine, where you remember bits of lobster and a Flintstone steak?
Yeah.
Because that's your last emotional sort of food experience.
True. So there were a couple reasons. At that point, my partner, Price, and I Price's family bought a piece of property here in Rockland. I had my mom's younger sister, my Aunt Nancy, had property in Rockport. And so we kind of had this connection. He grew up going to camp here. I had spent some time here. Although my time wasn't like the most memorable, I still really appreciated Maine, the topography, a lot of things about Maine. Maine, has, at that point, had one of the biggest organic farmers and gardeners. MAFCA was one of the biggest organic associations, actually in the whole country. They were the most organized because we're so behind that we're ahead.
That's amazing. Yay, Maine.
That was important to me. We wanted to be somewhere on the coast, and it was affordable 20 years ago.
Right.
Probably still affordable compared to other places. And so all of those things just started. We were upstate New York and coming here weekends and looking around. The only place we would go to would be Cafe Miranda. It was the only place to go to.
So that's going to be Talking Food in Maine Series 2.0. We'll find out that story, right, Carrie? Right.
But actually, Carrie was like a pioneer in Rockland, and Rockland was kind of scary.
Tell us about Rockland.
So
20 years ago.
there was Second Reed.
What's that?
Rock City. It was called Second Reed, the coffee shop, Rock City.
Oh.
Patrick and Suzanne, the original place they had, and they were making like some really nice sandwiches. They were from California, so they had a different influence in bringing like a different flavor into the town. And then Carrie was there. But other than that, there really was nothing on Main Street in Rockland. Like maybe a few tumbleweeds rolling down the street. A lot of storefronts were empty. And I was like, I think I want to come here. And Price said, I think you're crazy. And I said, no, I think this might work. And I said, you know what? If it doesn't work, we'll go somewhere else. But let's give it a shot. We had looked at a few different places. Where Primo was Jessica's. So it was a restaurant before. It was in very hard disrepair. I mean, it was dirty, and they were done. Basically, the people that were running it were not giving it any love or attention anymore. But I looked at a place in Camden. I looked at a couple other where first long grain was. And I looked at the Belmont Inn in Camden. But I said, I don't want to have rooms, because after working at Old Chatham, I was like, they would call me at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, it smells like lamb's fat in here. I'm like, well, that's because there's lamb stock on the stove, you know. Or we hear your refrigerator's running. I'm like, okay. Yeah, they're running.
But just Relais and Chateau.
Yeah.
We'll cook for you tomorrow.
I said I just didn't want to have rooms. I just decided I just wanted to have a restaurant. So we started looking around, and then that property came available, Primo, and we did it.
So you just picked this piece of land and you said, all right, what am I going to do on this land?
Yeah.
What was your business plan in your head?
So I knew after Old Chatham that I wanted to have a greenhouse and a garden and grow food, and I knew that was the way I was going to cook for the rest of my life. I saw that land. It was totally overgrown with sumac and milkweed. The whole back of it was just thick, and there were some established gardens right around the house because the previous owner's wife grew flowers, and she really did some beautiful things, which I still enjoy. But I brought a few of my cooks from Old Chatham with me, and we hired a young gardener, young boy from New Jersey who really didn't know what he was doing, but
what was his name?
Dan.
Dan from New Jersey?
Dan from New Jersey. Yeah. And he ended up marrying one of the girls I brought as a cook. And he cleared the land and made this giant garden. And then we learned pretty quickly that don't let the garden rule you, you rule the garden, because we grew too much and we couldn't harvest things fast enough. And it's been a huge learning curve over the years.
So let's talk about this, because I came to visit you in June, and I walked through it in this, spring, and I was just blown away at how much was already in place because of your master gardener, Dylan, and the plans you had in place for that season. So my question to you is, before we sort of look through these photos, I want to know, how do you decide what your menu is going to be for that season, and then daily, and how are you going to plan ahead for that season and what you're going to grow?
Yeah, so, the seed catalogs start coming out in November, December. We start kind of pining through them, what we want to grow. We keep serious notes every year, so we know what we grew, how much we harvested, what worked, what didn't work, why it didn't work. Some of it's our error, some of it's Mother Nature throwing curveballs.
Right, because
at
you
us.
can't run to Hannaford and get what you need that night. This is farm to table. This is
Yeah,
primo.
and
right.
sometimes you have tomatoes, and sometimes you have green tomatoes. You know, sometimes you have lots of greens, and you have something on your menu, and then all of a sudden it's gone, or something eats it. So, I mean, you have to be creative and willing to change things. But as far as the planning goes, we start that in the winter, and we make planting schedules and calendars, and we order our seeds, and we know how much we used the previous years and what we're going to grow and how much. It's a gamble, you know. We try our hardest, and sometimes the weather doesn't cooperate. This year the spring was very late and cold.
Right.
And so we start things in the greenhouse, and then when can we bring them out? Maybe it's early May. Sometimes we play against Mother Nature and say, all right, let's plant our peas in April, and then we could get a frost and they could all die.
So how does that influence what how do you game plan around that? Because you're dealing with Mother Nature, but you also have the economics of running a restaurant,
Right.
and people counting on you for opening day, and your team's there, and you're trying to figure out the menus. I mean, you've got some great pictures we're showing here, and you know, this was June.
Yeah. So support working with some other local farmers also helps fill in the blanks when we can't perform in certain areas, especially because I work with Hope's Edge Farm a lot, Tom, and he's inland, and his, being that much further, not that far away, but the climate is it's a microclimate, and it's a lot warmer.
Yeah.
So he gets things earlier than we do, or later, and so I have to have those things in my pocket. So I'm not going to say we grow everything that we cook, but we try as much as possible to, and I'll just tweak the menu to what we have. So if we don't have something, but we have a lot of something else, that's what goes on the menu.
So give us a day in your life at Primo's. You wake up in the morning. What's the game plan? How do you plan the menu for that day, and who designs it? Who orchestrates the whole thing?
So you have to back up to the day before. So the gardeners leave, 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and they have a harvest list. So they write down everything that's available for us. And then they'll write down things that they have to harvest because it's time to rip them out and put something else in. So the harvest list is in the gardener's mailbox at midnight. So at midnight, when we're done with service, we pick up the harvest list and we look at it and we circle things that we want. And then we look at the menu. What did we sell? What fish is here? What are we getting? A cow? Do we have a pig? What's happening? So then we kind of start building what's available.
At midnight. You start planning the next day.
Yeah, and then in the morning when I go in, which is 9 o'clock, they're already harvesting everything that we circled at midnight. So things start coming in, and then Dylan, our farmer, will show me things. He'll be like, well, I have these, or this, do you want to taste this? Do you think this is ready? Eggplant or peppers, or I have these cucumbers that were a trial. So he'll start showing me different things, and then I'll say yes, and I'm on the phone with a fish person or two, and it just starts to kind of organically happen.
And then the health inspector walks in like they did when I was there, just kind of like,
that can happen too.
So tell us about the pigs. What was your love affair with the pigs? Because you didn't start out with pigs, did you?
I did the first year I had 2 pigs.
Oh, you did?
The first year I had 2 grouse rolls. So I had pigs at Old Chatham. But I wasn't that closely connected to them because they were kind of down the road, and the shepherd, he raised them. But the thing that I liked about having pigs was the recycling program, because they ate all of the waste. So that was like, okay.
Lucky pigs, they eat primo food.
Yeah,
Waste,
so in our kitchen, in the kitchen we have buckets. We have orange, a blue, a white, and a silver bucket. So the orange one is pig food, the blue one is chicken food, the white one is compost, and the silver one is shells. So we sort everything we do. So as we're prepping during the day, nothing goes in the garbage, nothing really.
Right.
And paper goes to the wood oven. So we try like to have minimal waste. And that was more of the reason I wanted to have pigs than anything. But after having them, they're just like so fun, and they're happy, and they're actually a lot smarter than you would think. And once, you know, harvesting them is difficult. You know, we build a relationship with them we get them in May, we slaughter them the end of October. So they're only about, 7-8 months old. And if you think about a baby that's 7 or 8 months old, they don't really grow that much. But a pig will be 300 pounds. From being this big to 300 pounds, 350 pounds. It's crazy.
Amazing.
And
how do you balance that?
Harvesting them, that's still always a challenging day for me.
Because I've heard you say it just disrupts your universe when you...
Having the right people handle them. Now I work with Beesons in Tucson, who I love. Andy, he's great. And he comes and he's always very gentle with them and loads them on. They have to go to a slaughterhouse because we're not allowed to slaughter them. We do have a producer's license to slaughter chickens, which I'll talk about afterwards. But he comes and he gets them sometimes it can be 20 minutes, sometimes it can take 4 hours to get them on the truck, and he doesn't care. And
wow.
I used to have someone else who came and he'd be like kind of rough, and I'd always be sad, and I know he's gonna like take care of them. They stay in a pen overnight, and then they get slaughtered in the morning, and we bring them back, and we do not waste one piece.
And I believe this because I walked through your kitchen, and in the corner of my eye, I saw a pig's ear being pickled.
Yeah.
In a jar, and I was like,
the
what?
fat.
And then there was, everything. Tell us about this. So snout to tail. Tell us how you.
So
how
we slaughter them, and then we bring them back, and we have now 15, 16 pigs at a time. So it's 4,000 pounds of meat to deal with at one. They come back, and it's 4,000 pounds of meat. And we're busy, the restaurant's open, so it's like we're trying to deal with this in-between service. But we separate everything into parts, and we decide, we have a serious plan. Like I make a plan. I said, okay, this is what we're gonna do. The shoulders, we're going to make spalla and sausage, and then the legs are gonna be prosciutto, and the bellies, we're gonna use this much fresh, and we're gonna cure some and put them away for maybe the beginning of next season. Right. A lot of it we're working 1 or 2 years in advance with charcuterie. Prosciutto we cure for 3 years. Some pancetta we can use maybe in a few weeks. Head cheese, pate. We try and sell the middle of the animal, the loins, the pork chops immediately, which people pine for because they're beautiful and delicious,
and they're huge.
And yeah, where do you get like a giant pork chop like that? That's just cared for from day one to the end.
And you make like a cookie out of the
we make pork crackling cookies
with ginger, right?
Yeah,
from the ginger right from your garden.
They're addictive.
Salty,
yeah.
but sweet.
So we definitely use every single scrap of the pig,
and that's proof right there, because there's an entire bar dedicated to charcuterie and salumis and cheese.
And it's all.
Now, when did you create that? Because that was not original.
That happened because that whole side of the restaurant we added on maybe 12 years ago.
Oh wow, it's been that
11
long.
or 12 years ago, yeah. So we added the first floor, and then we added the top afterwards.
And I heard that's like the hottest spot, is to sit at the Primo Bar, right?
Well, I mean, at that point, we were like kind of in a little bit of a recession, and we were like, it was hard to get a reservation. Like there was a stigma about getting a reservation at Primo, and it wasn't always true. But we wanted to create a space that people could just walk into and just have a snack, have a pizza, have a glass of wine, have a salad, and not feel like they had to have a whole meal and a dining experience. So that's why we did that, and it's been pretty successful for us. So we keep 65 seats open every night that are unreserved.
65 every night? And I bet you they're always full.
Most of the time. I mean, this time of year things change, but in the summertime for sure.
I love what you said when I was there, because when I moved to Maine, that was 12 years ago, you know, I was under that impression that you're never going to get a seat at Primo, so don't even bother. You know, don't bother driving all the way up to Rockland, because, you know, you just won't. And I'm glad you said to me, you know, no, I wanted to create a place where a lobsterman and one of the Rockefellers could sit together and eat, and it would be okay.
Yeah.
You know, and you've successfully done that.
Yeah, it was, we had to like break it. It was not easy to break that.
What sort of steps did you take to sort of break that stigma?
Well, I think creating the space was key, but also creating a bar menu and
the nuts,
small plates, and like the charcuterie and the cheese, and just come in and just enjoy, instead of, you know, having a reservation and having to feel like you have to have a 4-course meal.
Wow. So now tell us about the bread, because your bread is legendary, and you have an incredible baker, Melissa Lagare. She's been with you for what?
12 years
12 years?
now. Yeah, so the bread, so originally when we created the restaurant, it's so funny because like I was just in New York and going to restaurants, nobody even gives bread out in any restaurant anymore. It's rare.
Seriously?
It's rare.
In New York City?
And a lot of places charge for it now. And growing up in an Italian family, bread was like a major part of the meal. We always, and I had an Italian deli on the corner of my street. We always had this beautiful sesame semolina bread for dinner every night, Italian bread. It was part of dinner. It was a big part of dinner. Like you wouldn't have your meal without bread. And so we knew that we wanted to do that. And at Old Chatham, we did different things. We did like biscuits some nights and brioche some nights and different things. But we wanted to create, coming from Old Chatham to Primo, I wanted to break the Relais and Chateau high-end thing, because I didn't think it was going to fly in Rockland. So we built a wood oven. Pat Manley, a local mason, built it for us. Actually, Carrie is the one who turned me on to him. And with the oven, I said I want to bake bread in this oven. So we started doing research, and we made a levain, which was a naturally fermented sourdough bread. And we played around with a few different recipes until we got the one we liked. And we started out with making that, and then we made a focaccia. And then baguettes kind of come in and out, like we do them occasionally, or not every day, or every other day. But the levain, the starter now, so originally when we were at Old Chatham, Price had gone to a bread class with Steve Sullivan, who started Acme Bread in Berkeley.
Yeah.
And he stole a piece of the starter. So this starter is now like 35 years old, and
my goodness.
We've kept it alive, and Price is gone, but the starter's still there. But I have that starter in all 3 of my locations. So in Primo in Orlando, Primo in Tucson, they make the same bread.
All right, so
with
talk about
the same starter.
Tell us about GW Marriott and Stars in Tucson.
Yeah, so after we were open like 4 or 5 years, no, maybe 6 years, there was the Owl's Head Antique Automobile car auction.
Yeah.
And someone came to the restaurant. They came to go to the auction, and then they came to have dinner at the restaurant. And the next day I got a phone call, and they said, hey, we had dinner last night. We love the restaurant. We're opening a hotel in Orlando, and we're looking for a concept. And I said, this is not a concept. No. I said, no, thank you. This is not a concept. Then they called me back the next day. They said, all right, we would love to talk to you about possibly coming here and having a restaurant. I said, I don't think, I work on the line every day, I cook every day, there's no possible way I can do this, so I don't think so. So I kept saying no, and they kept calling me back for like a week straight. And finally they said, can you just come down and see it? I said, okay, I'll come down and see it. So I flew down to Orlando, and this giant hotel was being built, and I was like, I don't think this is gonna work. I don't know how we would do it. And they're like, all right, well, just think about it. And they said, well, why don't you come back and cook for the partners, and then we can negotiate what you want. What would you want to do this? I said, all right. So I came back, and I brought boxes and boxes of food with me. I brought fish, I brought lobster, I brought produce.
All the way from Maine?
Yeah, because I was like, I'm not gonna go down there and cook with their crappy ingredients. Which is what they had. Like, they were like, oh, here's your mystery basket. I'm like, no, I have my own stuff. Don't worry about it. So I cooked, and they were like, as I was cooking, I was supposed to make like 6 dishes. I ended up making like 15 things, because I was like, oh, I'll make this and I'll make that. And I kept doing more, and more executives started coming, and they were on the phone, and they're like, we have to do this. They said, what will it take? I said, all right, I'll give you a laundry list, because I said they'll never agree. So I said, I have to hire my own chef, I have to hire my own manager, I have to write the menus. I need 100% support on who I order my food from. I'm not going to go through your vendors. I'm going to get my own farmers, and I gave them this giant list.
Did you ask for a garden?
Yeah.
In the middle of a desert?
Yeah, it has to be a garden. Has to be a garden. Yeah.
And they said, okay, we'll give you a garden in the middle of the desert.
And at the end, they said yes to everything. And then I was like, oh, no, now I have to do this.
They called your bluff.
They did.
They totally called your bluff.
They did. But I've been there now for 16 years in Orlando, and for 14 years in Tucson.
Amazing.
So they've been really good partners. You know, on and off, Marriott changes their managers a lot. So I have to deal with someone who's like, oh, let's change your steak, you know, or change the salt. And they want to save 2 pennies or something. And I'm like, no, this is what we use, and this is what we do. And so sometimes,
and you tell them where to park the truck.
Yeah, sometimes it's a fight.
Right?
Yeah. Sometimes it's a fight. Yeah. But right now, we have brand new owners in Orlando who are renovating the whole property, and they're young and sustainable and excited, and I am so happy to be partnering with them.
So how do you balance both? I mean, and when I mean both, I mean the whole Primo aspect here. You've got a great crew, you know, and Dustin and Melissa and everyone, but how do you manage what's going on there? Because that's your heart and soul as well.
Right,
you know, in a very corporate environment.
It does kind of all boil down to the people, which is tricky, because, you know, young chefs and young managers want to move on and, you know, move on and upward all the time. So, and you want to support them and encourage them to do that, but you also want to try and entice them to stay and keep a positive work environment where they're continually learning and feel supported. I think that's where I've been lucky. Dylan, Dustin, Mel, my tight team around me. I take care of them, and then they take care of me.
So when you hire somebody at Primo, whether it's in Tucson or Orlando or here in Maine, what do they have to cook you? I'm just curious.
Well, actually, my chef from Orlando did come up here and cook for us before we hired him, which it's not something I typically do, but I don't think it's a bad idea to start doing, but
oops. But I mean, what do you look for? What sort of a culture are you trying to maintain, and who makes it through and your process?
I feel like I can teach people the style of Primo and cooking, and it's really like finding a person who is passionate and who is a good, solid person, who is a hard worker. Like, those qualities you can't teach someone, but I can give you a recipe. I can tell you how to write a schedule or how to make a menu. I can teach you those things, but I can't tell you if you're a good person or not a good person, how to treat your staff, how to be with the guests, how to manage yourself, and to be excited every day when you come to work. I can't teach you that. You have to have that. So that's what I look for.
And they stay with you a long time.
I've been blessed in that way, yeah.
And the best part about it is that you were saying, a lot of these chefs kind of go off and they start their own thing. And they sort of treat you like they're Alice Waters, which is very cool. Because I've heard you say that you've pretty much passed on the torch for Chez Panisse here in Maine.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
pretty
I mean, I
amazing.
think that's something that you invest in they're like your children.
Right.
Yeah, they are. I feel like my staff are like my children. So when they're in jail, they call you. When they,
It's so funny.
when they crash their car, they call you. In the middle of the night,
Yes.
can you bail me out? Can I borrow? I mean, I've done it all.
Okay, so
And I don't have kids.
well, the pigs are your kids and the sheep's your kids. But so this is funny you said this because Anthony Bourdain said the same thing. If he ever gets, if he's ever in a jail cell, he'd call his chef buddies first before his writer friends because he knew they would come and bail him out.
Yeah.
So that being said, tell us about Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah, we were fortunate enough to have him come and spend some time with us. He was a force, a huge force. I mean, very excited about life and love and food and sex, drugs, and rock and roll and everything else. But when he came, it was like the last night of our season, which is like a crazy night at Primo because when you're closing for the season, all your locals, all your friends and family show up, and so it's always a crazy busy night.
Right.
And they were filming on that night, and I was just like, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea, but you're never gonna say no for an opportunity like that. So they came, and I remember he was sitting at the table and we were sending food up, and I was cooking and getting plates ready, but I had to go up and talk and be on film with him at the same time. And I remember at one point I had a glass, which we put fritters in, like a martini glass, and I had it on the expo station, and it got really busy, and I turned around and I broke the glass, I cut my finger, I was like hemorrhaging blood all over the place, and they were like, you have to go upstairs right now. I'm like, no, and like tickets were like rolling in on the ticket machine, and I'm like screaming at the cooks like to put food out, and I'm bleeding. I'm like, somebody wrap up my hand, and can you give me a beer on the way up the stairs too? But it was like crazy time. But I mean, I can't tell you how much that generated business for us. I mean, he was very big force, and I got opportunities to work with him after that, filming the Florida Film Festival, the Cayman Islands Cookout. I've done a couple times, and he was there, and he was just unfortunate. He was very passionate, almost to his own detriment, you know. But he taught us all so much about travel and food, and took us to all these special places that we probably wouldn't know.
So where would you like to go? What's your special place? Because I know you love Bangor, and I know you love upstate New York. But like, if you had a chance to go anywhere and just be Melissa, I've heard that you might want to chop up anchovies, is that right? Or fillet some anchovies?
So the first time I went to Sicily, my family's from Bologna, and that area I visited, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's really cool. I love Italy in general, but the first time I went to Sicily, I'm like, how am I not Sicilian? Like, I belong here. This feels so right. Everything about it felt right. But I saw this little lady on the side of the street with a card table, kind of like this, but square, and she's just like in a house dress with an apron, and she was just filleting anchovies, and I was like, that is my retirement plan. That is where I want to be.
All right, I'm going to pour you some wine.
I always threatened that if I disappear, and when I disappear, that's where you'll find me. It's the most beautiful place. You have the mountains and you have the sea. It's a very simple life. Italians are lazy. They don't really want to work that hard. So like nobody's in a rush to do anything. They like drink their coffee, they take a walk, then they take a nap, then they have food, then they take another nap, then they take a walk. have a little vino, and it's a nice lifestyle.
It's the life. I agree.
Yeah.
So is that your plan?
That's
What's
my
next?
plan. That's my
What's
plan.
next for you? Because you've already won, now not one, but 2 James Beard Awards. So the second one you won, which by the way, you guys should know this, you probably already do, but JBA does not award anybody 2 JBAs in one category. And Melissa is the only person that has ever won it twice. So, I mean, this little blue-eyed, deep dimple, don't mess around with me, I will show you where to put the pepperoni, won 2 JBAs.
You know,
So tell us about that. Tell us about when you won it this time for Primo,
well,
not for
it
somebody
meant a
else's
lot
restaurant.
more for me at Primo than it did at Old Chatham, because Old Chatham wasn't, I felt like I invested myself into Old Chatham, but Primo was mine. So
Right.
it definitely felt a little bit more special, and for not for just myself, but for the whole team.
Right.
Because we all did it together. And yeah, it's again, it's like a Cinderella thing. It's exciting, but it's like a flash in the pan. It means something, but what means more is what you do every day. Like if you're proud of what you do every day. And that's what I try and teach my cooks. Like, you know, like an accolade or this or that is great, but then tomorrow you're scrubbing pots. You're gonna be scrubbing pots. So if you can make beautiful food and be proud of what you do and support great local farmers, local businesses, and make people happy. We're in the business of making people happy. I don't know how, my most favorite customer ever was a young couple who were adopting a baby.
Yeah.
And they saved like pennies to come eat. And they said, we would never come here, but this is like a really special day for us. That's what it's about.
I mean, I don't even know where to go from there. Wow.
Restaurants should be, so the name restaurant means restore. It's a place you go to restore. And I think today restaurants are not that. Restaurants are a place where people just go and feed themselves. But if you can create an atmosphere where people go there for a reason, not just to eat, but for the whole experience, the whole package. That's why I do it.
And you've taken 20 years. And what do you see for the future of Primo?
I'm gonna try and go at least another 10.
Okay, and then you'll be in Sicily.
Yeah, then I'll be filleting anchovies. Come see me there.
Yeah. So you'll be like Nancy Silverton. You do like 6 months in California and like 6 months. So speaking about this, tell us, is the Diva Dinner happening?
October 27th.
It is happening.
So Nancy Silverton is coming.
Tell them who she is. Tell them who
Nancy Silverton, I met her, so she started Campanile with her husband, ex-husband, Mark Peel. And then they opened La Brea Bakery, so they had the restaurant and the bakery. They split up, she took the bakery. And then she sold the bakery, and she's then partnered with Mario Batali. Opened Mozza in LA, and she has a Mozza in Singapore and Pizzeria Mozza in LA also. She's since done a few other things. She owns Quispaca in LA, which is like a little meat-centric restaurant. She's a genius. I was lucky enough to meet her through Larry a couple times, but then I was invited to cook at a dinner called the Diva Dinner. This was a long time ago, probably, it was before Primo, so it was over 20 years ago. And it was a group of women chefs. We were cooking at the Biltmore in Coral Gables. Mm-hmm. It was really funny because the chefs there were all French men, and they got assigned each to be one of our assistants. Mine was Francois, and they organized these things for us, so like we had no choice. Like we did like a cooking class and a lunch and a dinner and this and that, but then they took us out like in a limousine and took us out to clubs and lunches and things. So I'd have to say, Francois, can you shuck those 3 cases of peas while I'm going to lunch? And he's like, I don't understand why you can't use frozen peas. I'm like, because you're gonna shuck those fresh peas for me while I'm at lunch. So this was the Diva Dinner, but I met Nancy there. She was one of the chefs, and so we're kind of having a reunion. So the original Diva Dinner was Nancy Silverton, Jody Adams from Rialto in Boston, Carmen Gonzalez, who is a Puerto Rican lovely chef who owned Carmen in Miami at the time, myself, and then Emily Lucchetti, who's a pastry chef. She was a pastry chef at Stars in San Francisco and Farallon. Wow. So right now, committed are Nancy, Jody, Carmen, and possibly Emily. We're not sure about Emily yet. And then I have a few other women. I'm gonna bring Kathleen Blake, who is my opening chef at Primo in Orlando, who's one of my best friends and a great chef and really good cook. Fun, really fun.
So how do we get tickets to this thing?
Just call Primo. Yeah, October 27th. So we
it's like
really,
a month from today.
I know, it was very difficult getting Nancy to commit, but she just committed, so.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be really fun.
So you're gonna do it in the barn? Let's show everybody the barn.
So I think we're gonna have hors d'oeuvres in the barn and then move into the restaurant.
Barn. Oh, that's such a beautiful hutch. So this is your outside porch you just added on this year, right?
We did build a new porch this year.
Don't you want to just...
Bacon popcorn.
What's that bacon popcorn about? Tell us about that.
Well, we always have a lot of bacon fat, so decided to cook some popcorn in it, and it's delicious.
And I love that. Who built that?
So that's the header from the original porch. Chris Biggert, who's one of our carpenters. As we took the porch down, I don't throw away anything. So I'm like, wait a minute, we can make something out of that. Wait. And so he made a bench for us out of the
This porch got done just in time this year.
So there's the barn.
Isn't that beautiful? All in blue.
So we will have hors d'oeuvres, the night of the Diva Dinner up there. Maybe some music.
Oh, definitely. Look at that. So that seats like 60, right?
Yeah, 60 to 75. That's all our garlic right there.
Is that red Russian garlic? So how do you decide, like, oh, we're going to have red Russian garlic?
Well, we actually grow a couple different varieties, and we try new things all the time. White porcelain, or we try and like see what works and what doesn't, what the size is, how easy is it to peel. That's important,
right?
You know, and because it's time consuming. And so, flavor, right, of course.
And has your garlic ever come through for you? Has it ever gone bad on you one season?
We had a disaster. We had a disaster one year because when you harvest garlic, you have to cure it. You have to hang it and dry it before you can process it and store it. So I had a gardener, and she hung it underneath the old porch, and it was a very humid fall, and it got moldy, mildew. All of it, 400 pounds. Oh. And she came in the kitchen, she was hyperventilating, crying, and she's like, I'm so sorry, and she said, it's all gone. And it was all gone. It wasn't even good for seed or anything. And
you could have been feed it to the pigs?
We did feed it to the pigs. But I mean, it's like a learning experience. Yeah. Most of the experiences that I had with the garden have been that way, because it's all trial and error, you know. Right. I have young kids working with me, and we do a lot of research, we keep a lot of notes, but every year is different. This year we cured our garlic underneath the new porch, and we put fans under there, and we kept checking it all the time. So it makes you more fastidious about what you do, and you live and learn. And
you have bees too, right? You have these beautiful Italian honeybees.
We have Italian honeybees. We have right now 4 hives. I was in New York yesterday, and I saw a little Instagram of my kids from Singapore, my students from Singapore. They were spinning honey. So we got about 40 pounds of honey yesterday.
Wow. Now, do you ever sell that, or do you only use it in the restaurant?
We use it mostly in the restaurant. Occasionally we'll sell it here or there or give it away as a gift, but we use it.
What's a typical dish? Is it dessert?
With the honey? Yeah. Well, we do lots of things with the honey. We'll use it in a dessert or on a cheese or glazing duck or something like that. But then even after we harvest the honey, we take the wax and we put it in water and ferment it, and we make a honey wine. And then we also make a honey vinegar. So it's not just the honey, we get all the byproducts from it also, which that's the beauty of doing things by yourself instead of buying honey. So you get all those value-added products.
Right. I read once that you do something special with cilantro flowers.
The seeds. The seed. When they go to seed.
Yeah.
So it's actually coriander. So when it's green, which no one ever gets green coriander. Right. I mean, you would only get it if you grew it yourself. But it's like this burst of beautiful green coriander flavor that pairs nicely with fish or with chicken.
Citrusy.
And so we take that and we pickle them sometimes so we can keep it longer. Yeah. Wow. All those little extra things you can get if you do it yourself.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to actually open up the floor to some very excited, very patient waiting audience here who've been dying to ask you questions. So we're going to open the floor for questions. Yes? You're going to tell me the question. I'm going to repeat it just so that everybody can hear it.
Hi, Mel.
Hi. Hi, Tom.
20 years ago, I weighed 140 pounds and had a lot of money. Mel has all my money, and I don't weigh 140 pounds. And I want to say I don't regret a minute of it. You've heard what she does and how she does it, and I've told people for 20 years, go up there. This is not just a Maine destination restaurant, it's a national destination restaurant. And everybody I've talked to over the years has gone. Some of you now will go that I haven't gotten to talk to yet, but go there. She's great. She's really great.
Thank you.
It's awesome. I mean, we had people come today. I don't know what's the farthest, but there was somebody here an hour early, and then they waited a half an hour because, you know, the UN. From Orr's Island? Somebody from Orr's Island? Wow. Do you have a question for Melissa today?
I just opened a small cafe from the Beards in New York about a year and a half ago, and I came from no culinary background whatsoever. It's just I am passionate about feeding people and making lovely food, and it's been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. The seasonal thing especially is like crazy up here. It's such a short season. But my husband and I have come to your restaurant numerous times, and you're an inspiration. I went out to Arizona, and they were having, they'd shut down the restaurant for some event, and the guy told me that we've been to Maine a couple times, and we came out here, we're just dying to eat, and they made room for us, and your staff everywhere is amazing. Every time we come here, we go to the bar, and we can sit there for hours, just grazing, and no one ever makes us feel like pressured to leave, or, you know, it's just amazing, and so you are an inspiration.
Thank you so much. Well, good luck with your business. It's a labor of love. Labor of love. Just persevere. If you love it, it will end up rewarding you. I promise.
The question back there. Could you stand up for us, please, so everyone can hear? And then I'm going to repeat the question, okay?
I don't have a lot of backstory. I have just a question. So you started to talk about why you do this, and it's the diner years and the experience. Can you talk a little, and we've heard a lot about your kitchen and where the food comes from. Can you talk a little bit more about service and what that means in the industry? Because it doesn't have to be a fine dining experience to have good service, and I just think that gets lost a lot of times in just any normal restaurant experience, and I just want to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think service is crucial. Making someone feel welcome and comfortable. And a big pet peeve of mine is everyone is the same. Anyone who walks through the door, doesn't matter if they are the Rockefellers or if they are Joe Schmo. Everyone is coming in there to have an experience, and whatever that experience is. If it's a celebration of life, of death, of
Adoption, a baby.
of adoption,
Yeah.
of today, or just coming in for dinner to enjoy and relax. I think service should be correct without being pretentious. I don't ever want someone to feel, and I think some people can get intimidated walking into certain restaurants that have white tablecloths and fancy things, but we try and break that. I try and have my staff understand that that's not what I'm looking for at all, that like we're welcoming the guests into our home, basically. And we want them to leave feeling like they had an experience, not just going to get a bite to eat. They made a connection, whether it was with the server or with the food or whatever it may be. I think service is crucial, and I think that's very important for restaurants today, not just restaurants, anywhere. If you go to the store, if you go, I mean, there's such a lack of service in general, where you go someplace and you can't even find someone to talk to ask a question, or if you do find them, they really don't know the answer or don't care to spend any time with you. It's about taking the time to connect with another person, and we're so far removed from that with everyone on their phones. I was in New York and I was just on the subway today and I was watching everyone on their phone, and people walking down the street like on their phone, like bumping into other people, crashing into baby carriages, and I was like, what is going on in this world? Like, people just don't even connect anymore, just look at each other or say hello, say good morning, say thank you. So yeah, service is really important, and I think a restaurant can provide something that we don't get in our day, maybe elsewhere. So.
And you're training your staff. I mean, you're cherry picking the ones who want to come and wait, who are actually touching and feeling these amazing experiences that you've just told us about with your guests who come all the way here to listen to you today. So, I mean, you're definitely doing something very unique with that for them to be that touched with the service. Because it doesn't just start in the kitchen, it actually continues on with your staff who are not slaving all day in the kitchen but are coming in for dinner service.
Right, I think
And
you
they
have
still
to create an atmosphere where they feel proud of what they're doing and happy to share that with the guests.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, I'm wondering if you get a chance to eat in other chefs' restaurants, and who do you think is doing exciting work in Maine?
In Maine, I do. I don't get out that often, but in my general area, I love Suzuki and Cafe Miranda and Long Grain are our three favorites. In Good Company, she does a really nice job, Melody. And Sammy's Deluxe, I like a lot. He's really kind of kooky and fun, and he has a small menu. And other than that, in Maine, honestly, I haven't spent much time in Portland this year.
What was your take in New York City? What was your most memorable meal you had this last few days?
I had both days really delicious lunches.
Well, that's
so I
good to
went
hear.
to King yesterday, which is two women who both worked at the River Cafe in London, and they opened this restaurant called King, and it's a very, very tiny menu. Everything was delicious. Service was great. It was really nice place. And then today, and it was a little bit of a nightmare, but I went to a restaurant called Crown Chai, which is in the financial district. And the chef was the chef at Nomad. And so he has a great pedigree. So I wanted to see the food because I knew it would be creative and fun. And getting from where I was with the whole UN business today to the financial district, I was 35 minutes late for my reservation, and then I had to get to the airport, which I was really worried about. Then my plane was delayed an hour after I got there, but we didn't have a lot of time, but the food was really good. The restaurant vibe was a little weird. The uniforms were weird, the service was weird, like a lot of stuff was strange, but the food was spot on. Yeah.
And that's good to hear about New York City, because you don't always get the best meal when you're in the Big Apple.
And then last night I went to Casamono, which is a Spanish restaurant, little tiny place that I love, that I always go to because I like to eat ham. And
So if you had, I'm going to ask you this one last question, because I know we're running out of time here, unless there's somebody that has to have a question asked. Okay. Yes. Sure.
On the earliest pictures, one of your menus, you had duck prosciutto. What is duck prosciutto?
so it's a duck breast cured in the style of prosciutto. So it's salted for a few days and then hung to dry. So it's basically cured, and then it's just like prosciutto, but it happens a lot quicker.
Same quality of meat as the ham?
It absolutely is. And it's delicious, and you can do it in a couple of weeks versus a couple of years. You should try it. It's really good.
Nice. Awesome. So if you had a chance to write your own cookbook, because you have written one cookbook, and it's How to Eat Mediterranean and Stay Slim, right? I mean, what's your dream cookbook if this was going to be your cookbook?
So the next book is not in the works, but in my head.
Tell us about it.
So I want to write a book that's called either From the Ground Up or A Full Circle Kitchen. Because I want to talk about composting, about preparing food, about cooking food, and about raising animals, about growing food, and all of the different nuances that happen when you see all of that. It's not like going to the grocery store and buying something and cooking, but when you raise an animal and you kill an animal, we kill chickens every Saturday at Primo. I kill chickens. How you deal with that whole process. What do you do with the feathers? What do you do with the blood? What do you do with the livers? What do you do with the bones, the skin, the heads, the feet? What do you do with all of that? And that's the book that I want to write. I'm not sure if anybody wants to buy that book. That's the book that I want to write. Probably nobody wants to buy that.
You'll be surprised. Yeah, you'll be surprised.
But the Full Circle Kitchen, I think, is something that is why I cook, and I think that people should understand that more, and they would have a different respect about what they buy or how they eat, and waste. Waste is a huge problem in this country. In the hotels that I partner with, the waste is unbelievable, and I go down there like a raving lunatic, and I'm like, what are you doing here? You know, they have a banquet and they have to put so much food out, and then it comes back, and I'm like, well, what are you gonna do? You're gonna throw it in the garbage? Why can't we find a better outlet for this? There's farms all in Central Florida. We can find people to come and pick this up, and so it's always a constant trying to make things better down there. And I think now I have a new opportunity, so that's good.
You have a new opportunity.
Well, new owners, and they're very sustainably focused, so I'm going to push it a little harder.
So when can we expect the new cookbook proposal, at least, to
Give
come
me
out?
1 more year.
1 more year?
Yeah.
All right. I'm smelling another JBA in the air, but this time for the cookbook, right? I think that'd be very cool. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you all.
How amazing is that?